Welcome to the Champion Stepdad podcast. We are exploring the unique role of stepdads, stepfathers, and bonus dads, and how to apply performance psychology skills to be better father figures and role models. Building that band of brothers through empathy and accountability. And I focused on those two things because number one, being a stepdad is tough. It's a unique role that has uh, strange limitations and requires patience and healthy boundaries. Accountability, because I get it, it's difficult, but you took on this role. There's no accidental stepdads. So use the opportunity to be the best father figure and mentor. We are your support and your accountability. I am your host, Neil Wattier. I'm a 16-year stepdad. I'm also a resilience trainer and a performance consultant. I ask you to join the Champion Stepdad Facebook group. We're small, but we're growing and we're engaged. So jump on there, join the conversation, and let's build a solid community. Also, a shout out to the other communities who are doing great work. I'm not here to compete. I want to grow the stepdad community, provide encouragement and accountability where I am able. So while I have my own Facebook group and I'm building a podcast and a community based on the Champion Stepdad mentality, I'm in other groups and I'm supporting other groups. So do a search wherever you're at, Facebook, YouTube, internet, whatever. Join a group, join a community, because community is how we build. As men, we're tribal people. We need other guys that we're going to grow with. The idea of Champion Stepdad is most guys I know are sports participants or fans, and the performance skills that athletes use in sports, can be adapted to all areas of performance. And I believe that includes relationships and parenting. You can benefit using performance skills in every area of your life. So, despite my experience, this is just as much as it is for me than it is for you. I want to share my experiences, tools, and tips, but I want to take away as much as I give. So once again, reminder that number one, that happened, now what, right? You're here and you want to go here. How do we get you there? We're men of action. We're men of accountability. Support, yes, but accountability. The other thing is, what doesn't kill you might make you weak. A survivor just exists. So don't be a survivor. You have to grow and thrive. Okay. I'm a resilience trainer and a performance consultant. I am not a licensed medical or mental health provider. If you need mental health, you need medical health, go see the provider that's appropriate. I'm a performance consultant, and this does not constitute substitution for advice from those professionals. So take it for what it is. We're going to have some great conversation tonight. I am a huge advocate for mental health. I will say that I've sat on the comfy couch, the comfy chair. I've talked to mental health providers, and I'm a huge advocate for mental health because the professionals are there for a reason. If you need, or you feel like you could benefit, not necessarily need it, but you could benefit from going and talk to somebody, go talk to somebody. I've reaped the benefits, and I encourage you to do the same. We're not satisfied with mediocrity. We're not too proud to seek professional guidance from qualified professionals. So with that, speaking of building a band of brothers, James, Miguel, and Mark, thank you very much for coming on the Champion Stepdad. We are in episode 2, and we are live on Facebook. This will also be repurposed into a audio podcast. So Champion Stepdad is on. We are on Spotify, we're on Stitcher, we're on Apple Podcasts, all the places where you hear podcasts. I have the website through Libsyn, so it's out there. And we're also going to be posting this on YouTube. So we're going to be all over the place. I want this to be an open conversation. So what I want, first of all, is everybody just take, 20 seconds, whatever, introduce where you're at, tell us where you're calling in from, and then give just a quick explanation of what's your experience as a stepdad. What's your current situation? James, let's start with you.
Well, man, thanks for having me on here. I love the mission. I love everything that you stand for and what you're trying to do. Mental health is, something that's affecting a wide variety of people, especially this pandemic, man. So thanks for doing this. Thanks for having me on here. Welcome, gentlemen. I love the band of brothers. Let's go. So James Golden, man, I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Pavement Management Group. I started that company about 10 years ago, and ironically enough, unfortunately, I had to go through a divorce, lose a house, all at the same time, man. So at that time, I had a 1-year-old, I had a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old. So kind of navigating the waters of, going to be a single parent, if you will, or, kind of like the weekend warrior dad while starting a business was a little bit of a challenge. I was very fortunate through that process to go all in on myself. go through a personal development and growth stage, if you will, over a couple year period of time. And I met my current beautiful wife, Jamie, and she had two lovely girls. So we're a big old blended family of five, man. And it's been a while now. So we've been married for 6 years, but been together about, she'll probably kill me. I'll screw this up, boy, but that's how it goes, right? I think pushing 10 years this year, man. It's crazy. So her girls have been in my life since they were very young, the ages of around 4 to 7 years old. When we got married, and even before that, obviously, I kind of took on that role. Their father just absent, which pretty common, right? The stuff happens. I kind of had shared parenting of my children, so in the beginning stages of kind of putting that all together was a little bit of a challenge, and I'm sure all my gentlemen here can attest to that stuff. But that's kind of where we're at right now. About 10 years as a big old blended family. The oldest is now 23. Two sons, 23, pushing 20. And then her two daughters are 16 and 14. And then my daughter is 11.
Nice. Thanks, James. Mark.
All right, let's see if I can make this make sense. First of all, Neil, thanks for inviting me. Also, it's great being on here with you guys. And good job calling this thing the Champion Stepdad, because otherwise I wouldn't be on here. So good job naming it. So I'm a realtor in Louisiana, Lake Charles, Louisiana, Southwest Louisiana, almost to Texas. And I have a 18-year-old natural daughter that I made. And same thing that James, same situation. I was in the military for 20 years. I was the weekend dad and sometimes a few months gone dad at a time. So I missed out on a lot of stuff and was divorced in 2005. So like her whole life, she's 18 now. So I'm not good at math. Neil knows that, but so it's been a hit and miss. I've always been in her life. I've always put in all that effort to be her dad, no matter what. And she's had stepdads in that role. So that's unique for me. She's had that. That's not unique just for me, but I've been on both sides of the coin. I currently am married. I just got married in June, and I have a 6-year-old, just turned 6 Friday, stepdaughter. And so I've had two only children, basically, because my daughter's away in college, my actual daughter. And it's interesting being on the other side now. My stepdaughter's been in my life for almost 2 years now. So I've basically been dad, stepdad for about 2 years, just officially for the last few months. But we'll get into that, some of the stories, I guess, during the podcast. That's my background.
Right on. Thanks, Mark. Miguel.
Wow. Thanks for having me. I guess we're kind of all in the same boat here. I started off with my wife at the time we were dated 22 years ago, and she had a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. And 22 years later, I'm still here. Their dad was absent, and now they're 32 and 28. And so we kind of went through those obstacle courses, and it was a hell of a roller coaster. So we had some good times and a lot of good times and bad times like anything else. But now we also have a 16-year-old and 15-year-old biological child with the same woman. So, it was kind of two separate families, but in one, if you know what I mean. So 2 older kids and two younger kids, and some grandchildren in it, kind of sprinkled in there too. So it's kind of a weird situation here.
It's not weird, man. It's reality.
Yeah. Is that the truth?
Well, and that's something that like with my situation, I like to share is, from my first marriage, I have 2 children, and they are currently 21 and 25. And then I had a second marriage, and I have a stepson who is 19. And now I'm in another relationship where I'm engaged, and she has 2 young children. She has a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. And for a while it was difficult because I felt like I was in this weird situation where, like, people are judging me, and they might be, but who cares? It's vulnerability is to build relationships, and to be honest and to really build takes vulnerability. And I just wrote down, because I was listening to you guys talk, vulnerability equals reality. And there's no way that we're going to build solid relationships. There's no way you can build a band of brothers around anything that's false. So whatever it is that we have as individuals, we have to own it. And there's nothing wrong with it. Whatever the situation is that you're in is the situation that you're in. It's reality. So let's just take that and let's use that as an opportunity to help other people, because from being on, I mentioned different Facebook groups. One of them is the Stepdad Den, and I jump in on that one quite a bit, and I engage with people and I listen to their frustrating posts and discussions of reality. And this is the stuff that we're facing. Like, this is real stuff, and there's no point in trying to hide any of this stuff. So if we're going to have a conversation and we're going to build a community, and we're going to build a community on empathy, support, compassion, but then the other side, accountability, then let's just be honest and let's lay it all out there. It is what it is. So, thanks very much for joining me, Mark, James, Miguel. I'm really excited to have you guys on here. I'm really looking forward to some great conversation. And with that, this is I'm hosting this, but this is not my conversation. I'm just trying to throw out a couple things. And I wanted to start with episode 1. I was kind of upset with myself in that I started the conversation with, "Hey, tell me what's the most challenging thing about your role as a stepdad." And we talked almost the first part of the show about like all the difficult things. And I'm like, I went back and I listened to it. I'm like, that was really dumb. Like, let me just call it what it was. Like, that was a bad idea. I don't want to hear about all the bad things. There's clearly struggle, but let me ask the question in a different way. What is it that you have experienced that has just been amazing for you?
You want me to start?
Go ahead, Mark.
I like to talk. So for me, the best thing, hands down, is just, first and foremost, it's a do-over. Like I mentioned that during my introduction of myself, that I missed out on a lot of stuff. So I'm, like most people do, I kicked myself, even if I didn't do anything quote unquote wrong, during my parenting of my daughter, my natural born daughter. There was times I just missed out on stuff and I couldn't help it. Right. It was my profession. But there was times that, like, no matter what, it felt like I was wrong. Like, it felt like I just could have done better, no matter, like, I couldn't have done better, but it felt like I could have done better. And now I am here, like, and I have a job now. It's completely time flexible. I still have to work and I still have to make a schedule, but it's completely flexible. It's on me. So I can make it to the gymnastics practice. I can make it to the school functions. I can do all that stuff that I didn't get to do before. And just being a part of that, even though, I'm not dad. Basically I am dad, and I'll touch on that later, but just being a part of that, my stepdaughter's life and just participating is humongous for me. And it feels awesome.
Right on. Guys, James, Miguel.
I'll jump in there real quick, man, and I want to piggyback off of that. I was going to leave with the same thing, Mark. I mean, it's not that it's a do-over, but I had my first child at 19, and I mean, I was 19 years old. We were that couple with my ex-wife that was taking her to the prom, full-blown pregnant, right? And you grow as you get older, and you have all these woulda, coulda, shoulda moments. We've all had them. It's with our own kids or even with our stepchildren, man. And this was a great opportunity when, with my current wife and her 2 daughters, to say, hey, it's almost like not a do-over, but like hitting that reset button and saying, man, now I have an opportunity. That's the key word, opportunity to kind of put my flavor on being myself and stepping up into that dad role for them, because like you were saying, like their father wasn't in the picture. So it was almost like that reset button to try some additional things, take a different direction, a different point of view, a different perspective, and kind of come together with my current wife versus my ex situation, being kids, having kids, and saying, hey, as adults, how are we going to go about this parenting process and kind of work towards getting on the same page? One more thing to add to that is, and Neil, you touched on it right out the gate, vulnerability, just being real. You know what I mean? Not realizing that, yes, you are dad in all capacities and husband and all that stuff, but you're a person too. A lot of times as fathers, we kind of carry that. You got to harden up. You got to toughen up. You got to knuckle up, right? my boys were older and my daughter was 1 when I was going through this situation. Here's 2 daughters that are already kind of coming up in the world, man. I had to show a lot of I had to like work towards that, and it was difficult for me, man. So that's been my experience with that.
Nice. See, I'm backwards from you two. I had two. I don't even want to say stepkids because their father was never around. I was the only man. They asked me if they could call me dad, so it wasn't something, it just came natural. But I was 20 years old and I had a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. And think about that. I'm just a damn kid myself. And so I had to learn how to be a man, learn how to be a father, learn how to be a husband, all because I wanted to, not because I had to. Are you with me? And so I told my wife I didn't even want children before I met her. And the next thing you know, I have a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It humbled me, it settled me down because I was on a path that was no good for anybody. And so then eventually when I knew, I was happy, I was content being a father, hey, let's keep it going, let's build to this family. And then we were blessed enough to get 2 additional kids out of it. And so it was the best thing. Just like you said, a little backwards, unorthodox, non-traditional, but either way, it's been a fun journey.
I love that, Miguel. And can I say something? Like you said, it's like I get to, not I have to. That's awesome.
Exactly.
Because I'll be honest with you, man. Just being myself. I'm transparent as AF. As them kids would say. When I was 19, it was like I have to. Like this was not a planned situation, man. And I kept that chip here for a long time, and that's why it was important to me to kind of open up with. I had to go on that like personal development for myself when shit hit the fan. And when the girls kind of came into my life, I was like, man, I get to. This is a cool opportunity to work on some stuff. You know what I mean? So.
When I talk to stepdads, there's so many different scenarios. So we've got some guys that we were previously in previous relationships, we have biological children. We meet somebody else that has children, right? Miguel, you had the other way. You met somebody with children and then you had children with that person. And I think it shows that, number one, we got to be careful of what it means to be a stepdad, because I know people who don't have any biological children and their children are their stepchildren, right? And some of them, the biological dad is in the picture. Some of them, they're not in the picture. In this particular situation with my fiance, her ex-husband is in the picture. He's local. That's actually the reason why we moved to Phoenix. We knew we were going to retire. I was going to retire from the military soon. And we just took the step and went ahead and moved down here before I retired to just be proactive about it, because that's the kind of relationship that we had. Is we want the kids to blossom. We want the kids to do well. So why would we not want to have a good relationship with their dad, who happens to be a good guy? Like, I don't plan on being best friends with the guy, but that doesn't mean that I can't like him and appreciate that he's a good dad. And it doesn't cause any limitations on me. It actually makes it a lot easier, because I can go out and I can do stepdad things and not have to worry about being the dad, because he's the dad. He's there, right? So I don't have to be jealous of him. I just have to be comfortable in my role, whatever that looks like. And so that's what the next thing I wanted to talk about is kind of the role of what you guys see. Because when I see these conversations in some of these Facebook groups, or I talk to other people who are in the stepdad role or some role similar to that, stepdads face limitations, right? And they're not biologically my children. There's a little bit of a barrier. There's something there, right? And we have to admit that, and we can work with it. We don't have to work against it. But many times I see that the situations that people talk about are not necessarily stepdad issues. They're relationship issues. It's communication. It's having standards and accountability and consistency. It's having healthy boundaries. These are basic relationship issues, whether you're talking about a significant other, a child, a brother or a sister, a parent, a good friend. Like, these are basic relationship issues. So I get it that stepdads have a unique role, and there are certain limitations associated with it. So talk to me about your experiences with limitations, working with those limitations, and your approach to them knowing that most of these things are just basic relationship issues?
Well, I like to start off first. I come from from a broken home, divorced home, however you want it, growing up. That's one of the reasons why I didn't want kids growing up, is because it was just, to me, it was miserable. But the one thing that I really, 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 I'm so glad that my wife never did. She never said, "These are my kids." These are my kids. My mother used to say with the men that she was dating in her life, "These are my kids. I'll do what I want with my kids." And my wife had never said that to me. And so, granted, it's there were always our kids, and that was a huge issue where, I didn't want to say I can do anything I want to them, but I pretty much, I was their dad. It was our kids from the beginning. That was huge in my sake.
I'm in the same exact boat, bro. I love that.
Mhm.
It, it all comes down to relationship issues in terms of limitations and things that are happening. I believe that, Neil. And I'll tell you, like, for my current wife and I, we really went down that road of like the core values. I mean, I'm a business owner, talking about core values in your business and stuff like that. It's like, why don't we get clear on those at home? You know what I mean? And part of that, I'm not trying to judge, but all too often we see that in divorce. Some people jump in, man. That happens. I get it. You know what I mean? And we don't get clear on those types of things. And now we have kids involved. And we are by no means perfect at this. None of us
Mhm.
are. But we did approach it exactly what Miguel said. We approached that situation as these are our children. This isn't going to be mine, his, and hers type situation. And that really helped us get clear on what we were really coming in this relationship for, what was all about, what we were trying to accomplish.
It makes the life that much easier, I think, just to be
Absolutely.
able to do what you want. And I'll be honest with you, I think we fight more, not fight. Our arguments now are more towards the biological kids than they ever were for the two older girls. Just because, I mean, I always tell my wife, man, you're these two little ones, you're trying to protect them from the world. I'm trying to prepare them for the world. Where the other ones, it's just mind-boggling how non-traditional it is with my situation. Go ahead, Mark. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, you're good. That's great. I have two opposite situations. One, in the past, I was actually dating. I almost got married in the past, back in 2012, and we tried to blend my daughter and my fiance at the time's son were 6 months apart, and the son didn't like me. I was not dad. I was not daddy. He didn't even want me to be with mommy, and we lived together, and that was bad. And that was her son, and my daughter was my daughter. Not on my watch and not in my opinion, but that's how definitely it was on the other side of the equation. And it was every little thing. Like my daughter didn't live with us all the time, as I already mentioned. And when she'd come to our house, when she was with her mom for a long period of time, she'd gain weight, like more than she should have gained weight. And so I had to be concerned about how we ate. So I tried to get her to eat healthy. Well, her son was a little athlete and didn't have to worry about what he ate.
Mhm.
So it was like, it's not fair to him that we have to eat healthy when your daughter's here. And it was like every little thing was just like, it's him and her. It was separate, and it was terrible. It tore us apart. It was very hard to live that way. And now the situation I'm in now is different. I am, so my stepdaughter does have a dad, and he's in her life technically, but not appropriately, like not how he should be, in my opinion, probably in most people's opinion. But not to dig into that, but I am dad, and what I was going to mention is probably later in the podcast, maybe we'll get to this, like titles, like whether she calls me, because sometimes she calls me dad, sometimes she calls me daddy, sometimes she doesn't. Like, and it's usually if she's upset with me, obviously she's not getting her way, then I'm Mark. And if we're having a great time and I'm playing pretend with her or playing a board game or whatever we're doing, then I'm like, sometimes I'm daddy, and I'm tucking her, I'm doing all the dad things. I'm tucking her in tonight. I'm, like I already mentioned, going to the school functions, stuff like that. So I am absolutely dad. But it's incumbent upon her mom though, when those moments come where like, you're not my dad, like that's like, no, he's not, but
Somebody has to be.
he kind of is. So like explain it to her, like you can't be ugly to him. just because you're not getting your way or whatever. And that's a huge difference in my life. Like it's night and day having the good relationship with the mother, the good
How old,
relationship with
how old is the daughter, Mark?
my stepdaughter is 6. She just turned 6.
Stepdaughter. 6.
Yeah, she just turned 6. So she's
Yeah.
still in that. She's still pretty immature. She's very smart, but she's still, emotionally immature. And
Mm.
as you can
It's
probably
a-
imagine, a 6-year-old being.
Yeah, I think you're going to have it harder than myself because I think the best thing I ever had was the absentee father, because eventually they're going to get older, they're going to get teenagers, and like you said, kids know how to play one parent against the other,
Yeah.
and eventually, like you said, well, you're not Mark, you're not my dad, you're not my father, and so once they learn that role, it's vital that you guys establish that bond and that connection, in my personal opinion, early, because when they get older, it's going to be fun.
And I got a similar situation. I got a stepson who's 6 years old, and it was I don't want to say odd, but it was a little uncomfortable at first for me, having a 21 and a 25-year-old biological son and daughter, and then a 19-year-old stepson from a previous marriage, and now I'm coming into a relationship where there's a 6 and 9. What I did before is not gonna work now, right? And because all the tools and techniques that I was using had aged, right? So not only am I supposed to be smarter and be able to do this better, but a lot of the stuff I was doing had progressed with the age of my children. Now I'm again working with a 6 and a 9-year-old. I can't treat them like I do with my 19 and 21-year-old, right? So going backwards, like I need to take a step back and be like, okay, how do I bring this down to the 6-year-old and remember what it's like to be around a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old? And Mark, you're right. And with a 6-year-old, there's sometimes I got to remind myself that he's not developed enough to understand attitude and perception and tone of voice. Like he doesn't get that. He doesn't, he might talk back, but he's a talker, man. And he'll talk, and he'll talk all day if I let him. Just before we were in here, we were out there playing a board game, and I'm like, dude, you got to leave the office. I'm going on a podcast, get out, but he just loves to be around me. I can't hate that. Right. But I encourage him to talk, because going backwards and trying to learn from whatever I did before, I want him to express himself. I can't expect to squash the emotions and the curiosity of a 6-year-old, because that's what they do. The kids explore, and that's how they learn. And for me to say, hey, you know what, you're grounded because you had a bad attitude. And he's like, well, what the hell does that mean?
We say quit being ugly. That's attitude. My biggest struggle, Neil, is absolutely the fact that she's a 6-year-old and she's a girl. So I had a little girl. I'm used to like going into that mode of playing with a little girl, but it's like with this one, my daughter was very chill. My biological daughter was very chill, and my stepdaughter is not chill. She's super active and a super active imagination. So I struggle with the line between I don't want to play pretend with you 24 hours a day when you're around in front of my face, but I also don't want to squash her imagination at all. Like I want her to be crazy and running around and excited. I really appreciate that from her, but I don't want to be involved in it all the time. And we can't, like we're still struggling with that to get her to like go and just do something by herself, because she's by herself. She has so I didn't mention this. There's another adult child from my wife, but she's not in the house. Like so it's not that she doesn't exist, but it's not part of the equation as far as being around the stepdaughter. So and I don't feel like I'm a stepdad to an adult, so because that was previous to me having a relationship with her mom. So but it's seriously a struggle, because I love playing with her. Like I play with her all the time, but it can't be literally to her. If it's not all the time, then it's never. Mark never plays with me. Like it gets to that level pretty quick. It's like okay, we just got done playing whatever make-believe game where I'm a cowboy and she's an alien or whatever. It's just weird stuff.
James, what's been your experience with your various ages?
Man, so kind of like when Miguel was talking about, and a little bit of Mark's experience here too. So like when I kind of came into that stepdad role, you're dealing with, two unique individuals you didn't help raise, so you weren't a part of that 4 to 7 year period of time, and how that parenting went on, all of those things. You only know so much too, from your significant other. And for me, I had older boys, like we just talked about, and all of a sudden, you fast forward 5 years going through the process, and now I got girls on periods. I got to go get tampons. Like, I'm just being real. I got to do all this stuff. That's like, wait a second. I didn't have to do any of those things. Like having boys, you fall down, scrape your knee. Hey, bro, get up, man. Just wipe some dirt on it. That kind of mentality. That was me. That was me as a dad with the boys as they were growing up. Well, trying to do that with the girls. No, man, they needed a little bit more. And I didn't know initially how to really do that. I had to figure out how to kind of be tough, but at the same time, be compassionate, if that makes sense, and it was hard, and luckily I kept working through it. My wife was great with me working through it, and vice versa. And same with her, with older boys. She inherited older boys. You know what I mean? She trying to make that connection and go through it. I had never had girls before. And like I told you, I have my own daughter, but she was 1 to 2 years old in that time frame. So she's just an infant. I'm still doing the bottle and the diapers. We're not talking about boys and interest and boyfriends and all that stuff. So I would just say more along lines like connecting and taking what experiences I had and saying, I got to throw those out the door. Those are dudes. These are girls, just different mindset, different everything. Right. So hopefully that makes some sense. I mean,
I think
I'd like to add,
yeah, go ahead, Mark.
I just like to add, so there's another wrinkle in that. So with girls, like for me, so I had my biological daughter, and then so I'm going through an airport by myself. So she's coming in the bathroom with me, like all that stuff. And like bath time, that's not a big deal because I'm her dad. Like now I'm not my stepdaughter's dad. So that takes me out of a lot of, I can't help with bath time, can't help with, certain things. It's not appropriate. So it makes it a little more of a challenge. I just want to add that to that.
Well, that's again, yeah, that's the reality part of it. We need to be aware of the sensitivity of, and I've got 2 young stepsons running around the house. And I'll go in the bedroom and close the door, or I'll go in the closet and close the door to get dressed. And they'll, bring up to their mom, hey, what's he doing? Why is he getting dressed in there? And it's not a big deal to them, but I need to be aware, right? What are the healthy boundaries? Because I don't want to create something that's weird on one way or the other. So maybe I'll try to act in the middle on some of those things that I can just be proactive and just eliminate the situation altogether. Right. And, for me, it's, being a guy with 2 young boys, you would think that it's okay. It shouldn't be an issue. Well, but let's be proactive about this thing, because as a stepdad, I just want to eliminate that problem altogether. So that's kind of how, being aware of those situations as a stepdad, either, a dad to a daughter or a dad to a son, we need to be aware of those things and be sensitive. They may not think it's a big deal now, or like the daughter, at 4 years old, it's not a big deal, but now suddenly they're 8 or 9 years old and things are changing. They're like, hey, it's kind of weird. Like, we need to be more proactive so that we're not reacting to weird situations. We could just kind of figure those out ahead of time. But it's gonna happen, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I just kind of went all in, you know what I mean? It's like, hey, this is a whole new experience for these girls at 4 and 7, and now, like I said, gosh, it's 14 and almost 7. I mean, it's just crazy, you know what I mean? How the time passes. I mean, Miguel, we got, geez, man, it's crazy. But I just kind of went all in with the experience. I made a lot of mistakes, owned up to them, right? Never went for my approach was always right. My wife and I would try to. You have some situations in the step parenting life, man. In terms of like calling me dad and stuff like that, from a young age on, I said, hey, look, you don't have to call me dad, right? But I'm here. So I was just trying to let them know every step of the way, like talk about titles. Someone had mentioned that was never important to me. Like, don't call me dad, or my name's James. You guys see that, but they call me Jimmy. You know what I mean? We rolled with that, and Jimmy is dad. They realize that. There's definitely a different dynamic that, maybe later on down the line or some other podcast, whatever, we can kind of go through with their own father, and that gets into your mental health, man, which is why I think this stuff is very important, and kind of breaking down and decompartmentalizing this entire type of issue, man. We're all different dudes, and at the same time, different situations. So it's important to have these conversations, I think, so others can realize it's okay, man. You know?
Yeah, I don't know what's up with your microphone, Miguel. I can't hear you. I'll let you figure that out. And while you're figuring that out, yeah, we talked a little bit about titles can be difficult. We came into a situation where the boys were they were concerned because so if my mom marries Neil, that means Neil's my dad and my dad's not my dad anymore. And so we had to sit him down. We're like, oh, hey, like let's hang on a second. Let's talk about this. Like I'm Neil. They don't, there was never a conversation about that. Like, cause I knew them previously. Cindy and I were friends. And then so I knew the boys ahead of time and they were comfortable with me. So they were already calling me Neil. So I didn't have that situation. But they were kind of concerned, like they were confused. And we got to get back to, the awareness of child development and their developmental and their comprehension of, we sat them down. We said, no, your dad is still your dad, and I told him, I said, I like your dad. Your dad's a good dad. So, don't be an asshole to your dad. He's still a good guy. Like, we had that straight talk, like, no, when you're at our house and you're Zoom calling your dad and you're playing games in the background, no, you turn that shit off and you pay attention to your dad because he deserves your respect. Like that's how I was, it's, you pay attention. And when you're over at your dad's house, you do the same thing for your mom. So I feel like that was kind of the role that I kind of fell into, is almost like mediator. Like I want to be a good father figure, but at the same time, I'm going to hold you accountable. Even at 6 years old, damn well you're playing a game and you're not paying attention to your dad. So that's kind of, I kind of fell into a good, almost a supportive role, and it's worked out pretty good so far. Miguel, you got your microphone working?
So can you hear me now?
Yeah, we're good.
Perfect. I apologize. No, I was in a situation where it was never, like you said, what do I call you? They always called me, my middle name was Carlos. So they always called me Carlos. And then eventually when they found out their mother and I would be getting married, they said, do we have to call you dad? And I said, you don't have to. They said, can we? Well, if you want. And before we were even married, they started calling me dad, which was pretty cool in my eyes. And it was good and bad because again, I was 10 years older than the oldest child. And when she was going through her teenage years and the boys are breaking her heart, she's 13, 14, I'm 23, 24, I'm ready to go kill somebody. So it was kind of, all right, let's go. You want to mess with my daughter? But yeah, and then you get that critical stage where their father was actually incarcerated. And so when they're at that vulnerable age and he's writing them letters and he's telling them, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It's kind of a fine line because you see, how many people say, I'm going to change when I get out. But in reality, it was something totally different. You knew what the writing was on the wall, what was going to happen. And so to the point where you don't want to burst their bubbles because now you're basically, you're talking bad about their dad. So you just had to be there knowing that the heartbreak was going to be just a matter of time before their heart was broken. And once he got out, he would forget all about him again, if you know what I mean. So it was kind of a weird situation in that.
Yeah, the letdowns are difficult,
Oh yeah.
My daughters, stepdaughter, my daughters. Can I just do that? I never really did the stepdaughter. Like I said, the mine, his, her thing. But it's tough, man. Their father not in the picture yet. He tries to make himself available and it's convenient for him. He's in a different state. You know what I'm saying? And is the guy a horrible individual? No, I'm not that. I'm not going to say that. We never spoke bad about their father. We never did that. Those were conversations that we had to have together. Like, this shit happened, right? Okay, well, we need to keep that at bay. We didn't want the kids to see us bashing that. We honestly, like you just said, man, wanted to be supportive and let them eventually kind of work through like their development, Neil, their child development years and kind of figure some of this stuff out on their own. Now, there's been some ramifications to it. And there's some positives to it, but it's been difficult with that letdown situation because it's coming. It's coming. We've been down this road before. Yep, my dad said that this is coming in the mail. Never shows up, right? No birthday card showed up. No Christmas present shows up. You know what I mean? And you have to be there to say, it's okay. I'm here. like you said, you were 23 and you want to go rip someone's head off. I'm 42 and that still creeps into my mindset, man.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like being that bigger person and all those things and just saying, man, we just got to be here for the kids, for those situations. But I think that's been the most difficult challenge on our end is sometimes as a stepdad, I'm toeing the line on, you know, how much to interject into a situation, things like that. And that's caused some tension at times. You know, fortunately, we've been able to kind of talk through almost all of those types of things, but that's kind of where it's at for me is, you know, being there to be a shoulder to lean on, and at the same time with your spouse or your significant, whatever your situation is trying to toe the line on when you're interjecting, when you're not supposed to be interjecting. Because I will tell you all maybe similar situations, especially when we were starting to kind of blend the family together. It was like, oh shoot, this is how I would parent it, and you want to just take action. But yet I had to learn real quickly, well, maybe that's not how she would do it. You know what I mean? So
it definitely, I say it definitely takes a lot of extra communication. Absolutely, James. It's just, it has to make it work, to make it good, to make it real. You have to just constantly, and not just with the kids, like outside of the kids, with your significant other, you're absolutely dead on, like just constant communication. And it doesn't have to be negative. It's positive. Like because if it goes negative, it's just going to keep going negative. So to get ahead of it, in my opinion, you just got to stay ahead of everything. I'd like to hit on real quick. So I mentioned titles earlier, and I don't know if anyone else has experienced this. My biggest problem, and this stemmed back from my biological child with her stepdad, her very first stepdad. It was one day I was Daddy Mark. She started calling me Daddy Mark, and I was like, "Where's this coming from?" And it was because I won't say his name. It was like, well, I'll just make up a name, Daddy John. It was Daddy John and Daddy Mark, and I was like, whoa, look. And this wasn't a conversation with my daughter. It was a conversation with her mom and then her husband. I said, I didn't like him, but that's irrelevant. I said, I don't care what you want her to call you. You can that's on you guys. You can, I don't like it. You can tell her she has to call you Daddy John. But I'm not Daddy Mark. Like, do not label me something else that I like that. She's not going to call me that. That's not my name. That's not going to be my name. I'm just Dad. So if you guys want to come up with some cutesy name or something, or still call him Daddy John, but just call me Dad or Daddy, whatever, like normal, because that to me, that was confusing to her and that was forced upon her, and that made me pretty mad. I was pretty heated with that. And I don't know if have you guys dealt with that at all?
Yeah, I did in my previous marriage. My ex had she was pretty adamant of the respect for the role, and her thing was she came up with, I think it was Mama and Papa, and I'm like, first of all, that sounds like Grandma and Grandpa, but there was too many other things going on. Like I didn't push back on it, but looking back on it, like I wish I would have said something. Now my 19-year-old stepson calls me by my name. And there's a lot to that. And without going into detail, his dad passed away at one point. His dad and I were really good friends, and it was tragic. It was really bad. And then shortly after that, it might have even been before that, he stopped calling me by anything but my name. And like, it was better. I felt more comfortable with him, and I feel comfortable now with the two younger boys calling me by my name, because I am a father figure, but I don't have to be called dad to effectively fill that role. I don't feel that's necessary. Like, and Miguel, that works for you and that's great. But for me, given my situations, it hasn't worked and it hasn't been comfortable. So yeah, I get it, Mark. It's just, you got to make sure that it's natural and that it works.
Well, and it should be, to me, when you say natural, Neil, I think it should be the child's choice. It should be, when you say natural, it should naturally happen, and that's what I'm doing. I couldn't care less now if my stepdaughter calls me Dad. It makes me feel good sometimes. Like, oh, Daddy, like, it's like cute or whatever. But I wouldn't, in a million years, I wouldn't care if she ever called me Dad again. If she calls me Mark for the rest of my life, I mean, that's totally cool, because I know what my role is. Like you keep saying it over and over again. I know what my role is, and it's a natural role. Yeah. And it's a good role, and it's just fine. Whatever you call it is fine. So
yeah, there were kids that had that adopted adopted the girls. And so they're now not biologically, but they're on paper, they're mine. One of them, one of the two, where the other father wouldn't let me adopt them. And, she was upset because me and her were closer than the older one. And long story short, I said, you know what? I said, we can turn around, we can go to court, we can fight it, but you know the truth. I know the truth. I mean, you're 14, 15 years old. Eventually you're going to get married. I said, you don't need, it's just title. You don't, it's just a name. Why spend all that money for something that's, we know the truth already? And she was all right with it. I said, if you really want to, we can, or we can just go on a really nice vacation. And she, let's go on vacation. So to me, it's like, so many people are fed up or caught up on titles. Well, I'm the vice president of transportation. What the heck's that mean? Well, I'm the gopher. Who cares? Just get the job done. If they call you, I mean, I've been called a lot worse names than what some people call me, by my own wife and my own kids. They call me some pretty rough names, but it's just a name, in my opinion.
I'll tell you guys, it's one thing more too, in terms of, it's funny how kids connect the dots. You know what I mean? Kids they're so interesting, man. They really are, in how they're influenced and the things that they pick up on. And especially you just wait till they get on social media, man. That's been a challenge. That's another conversation. But the daughters had a grandma before me, and it was Grammy Jane. Well, my kids called my grandma Grammy Janet. Now all of a sudden, the stepdaughters now have another Grammy. You know what I mean? So now it's Grammy Janet, Grammy, Jane. It's kind of common sense to say, oh, daddy this, daddy that, just because it's that association thing. But same thing, man. You kind of sit down and go through it and work through it. And then the other side of that is, now that those daughters are, one's a junior in high school, the other one's an 8th grader. You know what I mean? And I told you guys, they've been calling me Jimmy this entire time. I just roll with it. We didn't focus on titles, didn't care about that stuff. But it's cool to see them connect, or when they introduce me to their friends, it's dad, or to see them on social and they say, look what my dad did. So it's cool because I can see that connection has been made, an association, I should say. But no title, man. You're right. Just call me what was comfortable back then and just keep rolling with it, man. So,
and
yeah, so we talked a lot about roles, child development. Something that got brought up that I wanted to touch on is, the idea of, relationships. Talking real. I've been married twice before, and June I'm getting married again. And for a little while, it was almost uncomfortable to say that. But again, this is me. This is my reality, and I just want to own it. And looking back on, marriages that I look back on and say, wow, like that, how did I get myself into that situation? And, we talk about red flags and being self-aware and being real and being honest with yourself. Short of being married, if you're in a relationship, I get it. Like, no, people don't want to feel like failures. And really it comes down to that. Is guys don't want to fail. We don't want to feel like failures. And sometimes ending a relationship feels like a failure. Like, what did I do wrong? And legitimately, you should be able to do some self-reflection and say, what did I do to contribute to this? There's also sometimes where maybe you should look at what those red flags are so that you cannot get into the situation in the first place. If for some reason you got into that situation, there needs to be that continuous, not only continuous improvement, but also the continuous reflection of is this what's best for me? And if you're bringing kids into a relationship, is this what's best for my kids? And sometimes being non-judgmental, sometimes to say, you know what, there's too many red flags, there's too many conflicts. Mark, you talked about this. It's just not working out. That is not a failure. It's never a failure if you learn something from it. Doesn't matter what you did. It doesn't matter the mistakes you made. And I'm big on words matter, right? Because, what's the difference between guilt and shame? And this is really, really important when we talk about learning and growing. Guilt is judgment on the action. Shame is judgment on a character. So be very, very careful that you're learning. And if you feel guilty about something, that's fine. Learn from it and move on. But do not be shameful, because that is character assassination. And there's nowhere to go with that. You are calling yourself a lesser being by being shameful of something. You know what? It happened. I don't care what it is. I worked with an organization out of Omaha before I moved down to Phoenix, where we went to and we worked with incarcerated felons, and we worked with them as they transitioned out. And they had this amazing program that they worked with, and I had an opportunity working with them for a short period of time. Actually had the chance to go into the state correctional facility in Lincoln, Nebraska, and stand in front of 20 to 25 guys and have an honest conversation just like this, where they wanted the information, and some of them felt guilty and some of them felt shame. And I just kept telling them, stop doing that to yourself. You can't change it anyway. I can't change the fact that I've had 2 failed relationships and now I'm getting ready to get married again. I can be honest with myself and I can build up the relationship I'm on right now, right? And I can make sure that I'm making a good decision, but stop beating yourself up. And if you have the red flags and you feel like you need to walk away, then walk away. There's no failure if you learn from the situation.
Right.
Well, I would say if anybody's not afraid to fail of us 4 on here, it's definitely Mr. Golden over there. He got that Jim Kelly jersey on the back wall. So anybody lose some.
I love it, bro. Yeah.
Hey, I'm a Packers fan. I have a fresh loss in my life.
See, look at that, man. Bringing in the sports, it never fails.
Kansas City, Mark, in the AFC Championship, buddy. We're both hurting. Yeah, we call those the 4 Falls of Buffalo. It's a great 30 for 30 on ESPN or whatever. Check it out.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, it's there, but you got to, I look at it. I learned, I was a kid myself trying to become a man, and I was fortunate enough and blessed to have, two children to kind of practice on, so to speak. I treated them no different than I do my own. If anything, I would say I treated them, I don't want to say better than my little ones, but for the most part, I didn't handle them with the fine gloves. I was just natural, and I made a ton of mistakes with them, but those 2 girls, man, they're the most strongest, independent one out there you'll ever meet. I honestly say, man, I love that they run their households. They don't take no crap from anybody, and I think a lot of it has to do with the way their mother and I, we played our parts well.
So, man, this has been a great conversation. Before we get too much further into it, and wrap it up, with all the stuff, and we've hit on a lot of things today, what are some of the thoughts that you guys have? What are some of the messages that you would want other stepdads to know? Let's close it out with that conversation. What are some of the messages that you want other stepdads to hear?
Well, Good.
It's definitely worth it. I wouldn't trade my experiences for any. Those girls, they would do anything for me, and I would do anything for them. I've never considered myself a stepdad, and they hit those teenage years, and they learn the power of their tongue. They're going to start, using words and acting things just to get underneath your skin, because that's what kids are supposed to do. My own teenage kids do it. My biological do it, but ultimately, I mean, it's you're only going to get out of it what you put into it. And so it's definitely worth it in the end for me.
100%, man. And the other thing you need to look at too is when you decide, in our case, when you decide to marry someone else's mom, right? You're entering into an agreement. It's a contract. It's a marriage. You know what I mean? And all the love and the butterflies, and maybe you were beat down upon by your previous ex in those situations, and this is all exciting. I love what Neil said, man, but you know what? You have to audit the entire situation, because it's not about you anymore. It's not even about your significant other that's coming up. It's now about your kids, her kids, this whole dynamic. And you got to be able to think about everything and put it to, in terms of like full circle. You're now making a contract with not just her, like you did day one when you got married. It was just the 2 of you, and Miguel, kind of the opposite end of that, right? The same thing, man. Like now you're entering into a contract with others. You know what I mean? And whether you want to be stepdad, dad, Jimmy, Miguel, Mark, Daddy Mark, that shit goes out the window because you now are taking on that responsibility, whether you like it or not. And if you have to ask yourself that question, it's probably not a good fit. And to Neil's point, doesn't mean you're a failure potentially. It just means it's not the right fit. It's not in the best interest of the kids, number one. Maybe that other person, number two, or yourself, number three. You know what I mean? So.
Right on. Hey, James, don't ever call me Daddy Mark again.
I had to get that nudge in there.
I know. That was funny. We all laughed. No, I know. It's funny. My biggest takeaway from this, and my biggest thing to share with anybody is when you can't have it to feel like or to be like, I am your dad because I'm with your mom or whatever. It's not. It's separate. Like I keep saying stepdaughter. Again, it's a title. But yeah, my stepdaughter is my daughter, and I treat her that way. She does treat me like a dad. No matter what she calls me, she treats me like I'm her dad. We have our own special things that her mom's almost jealous of, like our bond that we have together. Like we play, we have our inside jokes. We, play around and joke around. Like we get under each other's skin on purpose. I love her personality. And I didn't say this earlier. The funniest thing to me is I see a lot of myself in her because it's the environment that she's in. I'm joking constantly, the sarcasm, and her mom's not that way, and her dad's really not that way. So like that's coming from me, and I'm not trying to change her.
Yeah.
But that's just by her being around me and interacting with me and having that bond with me, it's forming in her a little bit, and that's just kind of fun to see.
Yeah, I see a lot out of that in some in the step boys is the stepsons is Cindy brings up quite often. They're starting to you start to see some of my sense of humor coming out in them, and the dry and the sarcastic and the dad jokes and little things like that. She's like, you having a massive impact on those, and it does. It makes me smile. It makes me happy to know that I'm having a good positive impact on these boys.
Yeah, we went to the doctor once with the kids where they were going for checkups, and it was the best because my oldest daughter is a split image of mother, and the little one is basically kind of short, stocky, kind of built like me. And we go into the doctor. They said, "Man, you got the cute family. You got one daughter looks just like mom. You got one daughter looks just like dad." And we just all started laughing. Oh yeah. But, like you said, I mean, they take on your personality. They take on your characteristics. I mean, so we always say, I didn't get to make them, but I get to pay for them, and I get to enjoy them. That's
great. So, man, let's wrap this up. Whether you call them stepdads, stepfathers, or bonus dads, stepdads stepping up in the lives of their bonus children and having the opportunity to make a massive impact on each life will, by extension, improve your communities, will improve the world, because stepdads are helpers, they're stewards, they're mentors, they're father figures. You're not doing this alone. You're not expected to do this alone. You're not expected to know everything. So the best thing you can do is build your band of brothers. Look for your support and your accountability, starting right here. We want you to succeed. We want you to feel confident and comfortable in your role, and we want the youth that rely on you to succeed. So seek advice and assistance from mental health professionals. If you think it would be beneficial, be a lifelong learner, read books, listen to podcasts, take courses, find opportunities, push the boundaries of your knowledge and your experience. You chose this role, so approach it as the opportunity that it is. Thank you very much for listening to episode 2. Thanks to James, Miguel, Mark for joining me. You're very much welcome to come back for future episodes. Really enjoyed the conversation. My name is Neil Wattier. Follow me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Subscribe to YouTube, and follow the Champion Stepdad Facebook group. We want to grow the community and improve the conversation in there. It's the same old guys talking about the same old things. Let's get some new meat in there. I'll be back later this week with episode 3 of the Champion Stepdad.